Events of recent years have shown that advanced weapons don't always demonstrate the expected effectiveness. Often, it's quite the opposite. Older equipment, seasoned by past wars and conflicts, sometimes performs even better. Modernized T-72 or T-64 tanks can handle the same tasks as Armata or Abrams X, if only the latter were still present on the battlefield. By the way, there is considerable doubt that Armata or Abrams X would perform much better against drones, although they are incomparably more complex and expensive than the aforementioned T-72 or T-64. The thing is, new tanks were designed according to old rules, back when no one was thinking about drones. The same can be said about the Su-57 or F-35 compared to Su-34 or F-16, and there are countless such examples. But why is that? I think it's because the main weapon in any war is the human mind. It doesn't matter whose it is, a simple soldier, a platoon commander, or a general, an ordinary engineer, or the chief designer, a regular official, or the president himself. For any technique, tactic, organizational, or technical solution, the enemy will find a counter-argument. Therefore, the one who adapts more flexibly and quickly to realities will always be ahead. And this is called military ingenuity. In this video, I'll try to discuss through 5 specific examples why this happens, why for some reason the armed forces of the Russian Federation often end up a step ahead. By the way, I got all the information from open sources, primarily from Western publications and analytical channels, so whether someone likes it or not, this is an objective reality, and there's no room for rose-colored lenses from any side. Can immediately turn off this video. For the rest, I wish you pleasant viewing. The use of tunnel systems or separate underground pipes to get close to the enemy's frontline positions has become one of the most unpleasant surprises for the armed forces of Ukraine. As of today, at least 3 such incursions are known, but it all started with the infamous Avdiivka. It was there that the largest and probably the most significant breach of the Russia-Ukraine war, starting from the year 2022, occurred. A few words about how this happened. The offensive near Avdiivka by the armed forces of the Russian Federation began on the 10th of October, 2023. After a series of unsuccessful frontal attacks, soldiers discovered, possibly with local hints, an underground cast iron pipe about 1.20 meters in diameter and around 3.5 kilometers long. It was laid back in Soviet times for drainage purposes, to drain water during floods. It was built in the 70s, when summer village communities were being settled in the area. At some point, the pipe was abandoned, fell into disrepair, got filled with trash, and after autumn rains, it got partly flooded as well. According to Russian sources, it had to be cleaned almost by hand, and when special tools were required, artillery provided noise cover, starting to work at the time without hesitation. It is reported that water was pumped out of the pipe, necessary ventilation holes were made, lighting was even arranged, and at the right spot it was cut open and an exit dug out. On January 17, 2024, through the pipe that had been prepared over a couple of months, the entry of assault troops into the rear was carried out. Ukrainian sources reported about 150 infantrymen literally emerging from underground into one of the most fortified strongholds, Tsarskaya Ochota. At that time, it was reported they were allegedly knocked out from there, but the result is visible on the scoreboard. The Russians claim that after this operation, panic, chaos, and confusion began on the defending side, which is quite logical when they get into your back. And then, like a house of cards, the entire remaining defense of the Avdiivka garrison started to crumble. We all know how that ended. And no matter how this war's outcome turns out, the Avdiivka pipe will go down in military history textbooks as one of the modern examples of military ingenuity for achieving goals in the domain of total drone dominance and artillery density, when every meter was shot through and the defense leaned on a network of the most reliable fortifications. And a similar tactic has been used at least twice more. On July 1st, a breakthrough on the Terex was reported, and there's also news of the Kirov tunnel along the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass canal. The latter was reportedly used by the same group that worked in Avdiivka. In general, I note that this tactic was certainly not developed in the ranks of the Russian armed forces, but it is successfully applied, and as usual. If you know such examples, attach them along with links to materials in the comments under this video. I will definitely find them useful. Well, we move forward. The small operational range of drones is a significant deterrent factor that prevents them from flying too far from the front line. But in September 2024, it became known about the first use of some drone mother, which, being a hybrid of a plane and a quadcopter, was throwing a bunch of standard WPV drones directly into the rear. Yes, just like that, before our eyes, the image of warfare is changing. According to communications and UAV expert in SU Sergei Flash, 2 UAVs recently hit a Ukrainian unit 40 kilometers from the front line. This area is within the range of the longest range artillery. What's more interesting, the mother drone is reusable and can also conduct visual reconnaissance, meaning it's a scout drone. It also acts as a relay for control and video channels for the UAVs it deploys. This not only extends the range of these drones, but also reduces the effectiveness of enemy electronic warfare down to zero. Flash noted that this concept was obvious to those in the know, but he saw it in practice against the Ukrainian Armed Forces for the first time. It's like our bombers, he comments, but UAVs fly instead of bombs. Many say that these mother drones with UAVs might have been flying to Ukrainian airfields. The scheme is simple. The mother drone releases a mini drone, and it films as the target is hit. It's convenient and effective, and cheaper compared to guided shells or missiles. To be fair, this concept, like tunneling to the enemy, is not new. It's important to streamline the technology and be the first to benefit from it. Both in the Russian Armed Forces and the Ukrainian Armed Forces, developments of mother drones have appeared. The Russians had the Bee. The Ukrainians used a drone based on the hexacopter Baba Yaga. It also carried small FPVs and relayed signals. But they shared a common problem: slowness and large size, making them easy targets, even at night with thermal imaging. Moreover, destroying such a drone meant losing all FPVs attached to it. However, it seems that Russia has advanced with their new version, achieving higher speed and lower altitude flight, like classic FPVs. This is indirectly confirmed by the appearance of the drone, which now resembles a lancet, and not some makeshift contraption resembling a bee that looks like a sewer pipe with a propeller and engine attached. And unlike the latter, this novelty can take off and land vertically, which is crucial for action concealment. China might have quietly helped with this, since these guys recently unveiled their Bloodwing mother drone for 24 FPVs. But whatever the case, Flash notes it's a worrying sign, as if these drones go into mass production, they will influence combat activities. Mother drones are cheaper and simpler than those lancets, and they can be deployed in large numbers to effectively and economically take out artillery, air defense systems, and missile systems deep within enemy lines. Of course, I couldn't help but remember the planning bombs, FABs, cabs, and so on. What was all the fuss about in early 24 regarding the FAB 3000? Back then, it faced some justified criticism, because it really is more effective to attack a target with multiple FAB 1500, 500 or 250. Plus, the correction module for the 3-ton freely falling explosive bomb initially left much to be desired, as it almost always landed slightly off its intended target. By the way, UMPK, for clarity, is a set with fold-out wings and a built-in inertial satellite navigation system. It's what makes a dumb explosive into a smart one. The explosion of one such bomb a half-kilometer away from a person guarantees a concussion, and experts say that only a tactical nuclear weapon can rival its strength. Over time, the correction module was improved, and the criticism about the accuracy of the Tsar FAB gradually diminished. Furthermore, the FAB 1500 and FAB 3000 have some advantages that their American counterparts, like the JDAM extended range, lack. Firstly, there's the large caliber, we can say. GDAMs are bombs with a total weight from 230 to 910 kilograms, where the warhead is less than half of the mass. For example, the FAB 1500 with UMPK M54 has a total weight of 1550 kilos, with 675.5 kilos being the explosive alone. The second significant difference, as far as I understood, is the module's resilience to electronic warfare. The protected antenna block of the GLONASS receiver, Cometa, installed in the UMPK, is capable of effectively counteracting the opponent's electronic warfare. Interestingly, when creating the GDAMs in the late 90s and early 2000s, the factor of electronic warfare wasn't accounted for. As for GPS, it has long been learned how to be jammed reliably, which turned the smart American bomb into a simple, uncontrolled object. This is precisely why we have almost stopped hearing about HIMARS. Another feature that prevented the Ukrainian forces from effectively using GDAMs is the non-adaptability to their aviation. It requires a NATO standard weapon management system equipped with, for instance, a device to input data into the bomb's guidance head in real time during flight. MiGs, Sukhois and other Soviet birds apparently didn't approve such alterations. The main appeal of both FABs and JDMs is their ability to plan and strike targets from a long distance from the drop, approximately 80 to 100 kilometers. If before, an explosive would fly directly from a plane, which itself was practically over the target, now it's not necessary to risk the carrier since it remains outside the anti-aircraft defense zone. It is pretty much impossible to detect the planning FAB on radar. It doesn't have an engine and thus doesn't emit any heat or radio pulses. Starting from October 1st, debates have flared up online about a massive strike with some kind of incredibly powerful bomb in Volchansk. One camp thinks it was an ODAB 1500, while others claim the explosion was way more powerful and assert it might have been an FAB 5000 or even 9000. The reality is uncertain, but definitely the only thing more powerful than these dummies would be nuclear weapons. The FAB 9000 weighs 9.5 tons with 4,297 kilograms of explosives, and its yield is 44 tons of TNT equivalent. Yes, it's still far off from 2,500 tons like a tactical nuclear 152mm shell 3BV3, but still. Regarding Volchansk, I still lean toward it being an FAB, because there wasn't any volumetric detonation visible, and the nature of the explosion seemed like a high explosive one. It might have been an FAB 5000 that, despite all claims, had an OMPK module attached to it. In general, the introduction of FABs marked a turning point in the war, because such precise and destructive munitions rendered trench concrete tactics, chosen by the armed forces of Ukraine, obsolete. It's a massive and cheap-to-produce power that flies more or less accurately and safely, especially for its carrier, and it seems there's no antidote yet against FABs, KBs, and so on. That's why they have become the key to demolishing any fortifications, which, by the way, contributed to the fall of places like Avdiivka. The Russian Air Force, of course, tried the trick of repositioning Patriot air defense systems to shoot down Russian carrier planes when they approached the launch distance. But that didn't last long. There aren't many Patriots, and they are incredibly expensive, so immediately there was a wild hunt for them. Meanwhile, there are plenty of FABs. It's a crude and destructive force, bulldozing its way with the assurance of a bulldozer working in a quarry, becoming one of the main reasons for the advancement of Russian forces in Ukraine. The next innovation that I absolutely have to mention, of course, the king of grills. At some point, they became a wonder weapon that the whole world was talking about. Sire's tanks were nicknamed the frontline breakthrough tool because they proved invulnerable to FPV drones and other quadcopters carrying a cumulative charge. The idea was that a trapezoidal structure mounted over the tank forms a solid canopy 360 degrees around, set at some distance from the main armor. It could be made of anything: steel sheets, mesh, pro-thin metal sheets, thick pieces of rubber, etc. Such a grill covered all vulnerable zones and, interacting with a drone, initiated its ammunition to explode earlier, so that by the time the cumulative jet reached the main armor, it was already defocused and weakened. And it actually worked. Cheap drones, which at some point became wonder weapons themselves, turned out to be almost powerless against such a simple and budget-friendly innovation. By the way, this trick also worked against a large share of ATGMs like the Javelin. Oh, and I almost forgot. To avoid tempting fate, they also installed some grand array, jamming the drone signals so that most would drop ahead of time, losing their video feed or control. Truth be told, you have to guess the frequency to block, which drone operators constantly change. Anyway, electronic warfare against FPV is a known battle of sword versus shield, about which I have shared quite a bit on my channel. For example, I'd recommend watching this video where we discussed how tanks are defended from drones. In short, at one point in Undasara, these king grills or turtle tanks were calmly rolling along the front line, performing their combat tasks. Recent ones mostly involve ferrying assault troops to outposts, covering the infantry, or demining the area, which is why they would additionally attach a mine roller. This made the appearance of the machines even more apocalyptic. Such tank grills were repeatedly spotted in Krasnogorovka, Chasovy Yar, Nalimansky, Kherson, Kupiansky, and Vremyevsky directions, which indicates their successful practice. However, over time, in the SU, they managed to get the hang of fighting the king grills, and some even got captured. For instance, once it was done by dropping a grenade from a copter right next to a tank to damage its visible suspension part, thus immobilizing it. Then, they hit the stationary machine with everything they had: other drones, ATGM, artillery, etc. However, these are pretty tough nuts to crack, as recently there was information about one such modified T-72B that took over 100 hits from drones, javelins, and other munitions. Whether this is true or not, I don't know for sure, but it's a rough estimate from the crew, so maybe even more. As a brief conclusion, I'd say, no matter how much people laugh at the Tsar-mangals or dismiss this makeshift patchwork development, at that time they were the only effective armored vehicles on the front line. And they even allowed breakthroughs in several places, occupying critical strongpoints, like the refractory factory in Krasnogorovka, which clearly influenced the course of the war, along with other examples of military ingenuity we talk about in this episode. Tatun. Lastly, what I'd like to talk about is the motorcycle cavalry. Once, Spanish war correspondent Cristian Segura noted in an article for LPS about a new Russian assault tactic, which involved swift attacks on front positions using cross-country motorcycles like enduros. The first mentions of modern motorcycle cavalry appeared in April 2024, and now you can find dozens of such episodes, like the attack in the village of Urozhain at the Vremenevsky salient. Motorcycles play the same role as cavalry in wars of the past, quickly and unexpectedly delivering a crushing blow.
This is especially relevant today, when any movement is immediately pinpointed by UAVs, which either carry out attacks themselves or report target coordinates and adjust fire accordingly. In such conditions, something small, fast, and elusive is extremely effective. And what could be better than a motorcycle? Moreover, as LPS writes, electric bikes have been actively employed in recent months. They are silent, and even reconnaissance drones with thermal vision have a hard time spotting them. However, classic enduros are also not so easy to intercept. They are still quieter, faster, and more maneuverable than armored vehicles or SUVs, and if a drone approaches from the front, it's not difficult for a motorcyclist to dodge it. This is what one Ukrainian fighter near Pokrovsko told the Spanish journalist. That's why the Russians are using them more and continually improving this tactic. For instance, an assault soldier on the passenger seat can now shoot at drones with a 12-gauge shotgun. And in the future, an autonomous turret might even do this without human intervention. The classic tactic of motorcycle cavalry involves the following. Groups of 8 well-prepared assault soldiers ride on 4 motorcycles at dusk or at night. Completely unnoticed at the start, moving in zigzags and dispersed formation, they quickly reach forward trenches and attack them with motorcycles, and are waiting for the infantry group to follow them. Meanwhile, as the attack begins, artillery and FPV drones are working to suppress previously identified firing points. The main thing is that the enemy simply doesn't have enough time to react and organize a defense. The artillerymen don't have time to aim the fire, and the drone operators don't have time to launch their drones into the air. Plus, as a bonus, the dust kicked up by the motorcycle makes it hard for the operators to target the two-wheeled beast accurately. In fact, the motorcycle cavalry helped bring back the element of surprise in maneuvers, which seemed completely lost due to the transparency of the battlefield, where the enemy knows literally everything about you, your movements, and intentions. But, like any other tactic, attacks on motorcycles also have their drawbacks, and these stem mainly, oddly enough, from their advantages. As with many motorcycles, and more mangals are noticed, they are still poorly protected and thus vulnerable, especially when the enemy is ready for an attack. If the attack is revealed beforehand, it is doomed to fail. Motorcyclists are shot from an ambush, blown up by the same drones or mortar fire. If secrecy can be maintained, then effectively countering and taking out all the motorcyclists is unlikely for anyone. Kamata. Motorcycles are also used in the special forces, but not for rapid attacks, rather to supply the front lines with light weapons, gear, and supplies. And despite all the shortcomings, it's hard to deny the effectiveness of motorcycle attacks in modern warfare. As in all other cases, motorcycle cavalry has received as much flack as the King of Mangals, Dragon's Teeth, tunneling through a sewer, or nails on FPV drones for possible aerial battles with opponents. But only those who do nothing, don't experiment, fail to achieve results. It's okay to make mistakes, to try, but keep persistently moving towards your goal. This is roughly what I observe in the current conflict and have attempted to illustrate with specific examples in this video. I hope it was interesting, so please support me with a like and subscribe. Peace to all, be well, and see you soon in new videos.